We're the guys with the gift of gab. Two great guys with time on their hands. You know them and love them. It's TGIF, TGIF, TGIF with Santana and Joey. Thank God it's Friday.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to TGIF episode 3. Joey, happy Easter, belated.
Happy belated Easter. I know. I missed you.
I know it's been 2 weeks.
A whole 2 weeks.
But we're back and we're still sitting here.
Yes. Nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing.
Are you doing well?
Yeah, I'm getting to a point where I really need a haircut. I mean, this is getting long and shaggy. What are you doing to keep your hair tidy?
I just kind of switched the toupee out every other day.
Nice. Very nice.
You know. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that sort of hair care issue. I wish I did. Those were problems I'd gladly switch with you on, but I'm very jealous. Look at how high you've got a nice little poofy.
Yeah, this poof is brought to you by shampoo every once a week, and
once a week.
Yeah, and then some anxiety and desperation keeps it up. So it's all good.
Oh, well, speaking of once a week, we've been talking to Mimi Robinson once a week, and it's been 2 weeks, actually, since I've talked to her. I don't know if you've been in touch, but, do we know how she's doing?
No, I wonder what she's accomplished in the 2 weeks that we haven't talked to her. We should probably check in on her to make sure she is, alive and well.
All right, let's give her a call.
Hiya.
Hi. Oh.
Hi, how you doing?
Really good.
Yeah?
Really
changed?
good.
Because last time we checked in on you, you were in your emotions, you were in your feels.
And that was what it was, and that's okay. I think what's changed the most for me is just giving myself an outlet, a really healthy outlet in the form of good content.
Yeah. Something that gets you, active and fresh air and that stuff. Yeah. What kind of outlet are you talking about?
Oh, okay. Well, no. See, I was talking more entertainment, like television.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Been watching a lot of TV.
Yes. And what have you been watching?
Okay. I've been watching Netflix, Hulu, most of Disney Plus.
No. Like what shows have you been watching?
I think at the top for me, write this one down. Love is Blind.
Yeah? You think that's why do you say that?
Well, right now with quarantine being what it is, for those of us not currently in a relationship, it kind of gives you hope that, without any physical contact or even really knowing what the person looks like, you can find a connection. And I think that the connections made on that show were just really based in truth.
Oh yeah, you think?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to submit for season 2.
I was just going to ask if there's a season 2.
And what is
might we see
the submission tape going to look like?
What would you like if you were doing your intro tape right now? Like if we were Netflix and you were Marika Robinson, what would you say? Like how would you in 30 seconds introduce yourself?
Okay, well, just to play smart, because you want to appeal to Netflix and what that they like, I would just have to take a really strong approach. So if I Hey guys, my name's Marika Robinson. I'm petite 5'10", really 5'11", but I say 5'10" because for some reason that sounds smaller. I'm heavily into looks, and I just think that for me to find love, I have to not know what this person looks like, and hopefully he's not disgusting. I guess we'll find out. Love is blind, right?
Oh, well, we wish the best on your love endeavors, Marika. Really,
Yes.
Hey, it's Lee Pardini.
Oh no.
How's it going? Lee. This is our guest for the week, Lee Pardini. And this is Mimi Robinson, Lee, class of '09.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hey Lee, so nice to meet you. I'm on my way out. Enjoy.
Oh, okay. Nice crossover.
No, I think
See you later, buddy.
No, Lee, have you ever watched Love is Blind on Netflix?
Of course I have.
Yeah. So
Lee, are you currently in a relationship?
Yes.
Well, goodbye.
All right, we are back with Lee Pardini, class of 2003 and member of the band DAWES, amongst other exciting music ventures. Lee, thanks for being on TGIF. We appreciate it.
Of course. It's my pleasure, guys.
Awesome. But you were certainly heavily involved in what MIDI had to offer when you were a student there. Going down the Lee Pardini resume, we've got Exodus, we've got jazz band.
Yep.
And let's not forget jazz choir.
Jazz choir, one of my favorites.
That's right.
And that was when jazz band met after school, by the way.
Yeah.
I think my involvement would have changed if it was a 0 period when I was there.
Oh, Mr. Keemont would have somehow gotten you there.
Coffee on him every day. He would have had a pot of coffee ready or something to that effect.
Yeah, the jazz band kids, the commitment is amazing. I mean, they're there at 7 a.m, 4 days a week. For those of you who don't know this class, I mean, Mr. Keemont's been running this class, for the last 20 years, but it's moved from after school to the morning. And he's got 20, 25 kids in this class, including a vocalist every year, who are coming in from 7 to 7:45 in the morning and playing incredible jazz music. It's a really unique program, and the commitment is above and beyond, from not just the teacher, but also the students. I mean, when you kind of look back on your involvement in those 3 groups, I mean, what stands out for you? Like what kind of jumps out as memories?
I think with jazz band, I mean, just the ability to write a few arrangements, but also just be in a setting where I could improvise. That was definitely my first experience in, large big band formats, but also, we would travel to different festivals. I think the first one I ever did was in Reno, and we would compete at these sort of high school level kind of competitive festivals as they were. And so those are also memories that really stick out, where you have a panel of like adjudicators that, are well respected and in their own right. And I don't know, I think there was the responsibility and the subsequent pressure was really fun at the time.
Lee, your senior year was the first year that the Kincaid Theater was up and running, as you guys did 42nd Street, which you even got to conduct, right?
I did. It was terrifying.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
With 42nd Street, I mean, opening night was a huge deal. You get dressed up, you put on a tie, you look professional, and wielding a baton in front of your classmates and sort of being responsible for the show that way. But then you have an audience full of patrons that are your parents, that are supporters of the school, and people that kind of paid for the theater to be built, which was no small undertaking. So it was kind of a high pressure scenario, but it was extremely satisfying, when the show would end and you realize you made it through and people enjoyed it and there weren't any total train wrecks. I certainly won't forget that.
That show had Chelsea Morgan Stock in the lead role of Peggy Sawyer. Allison Johnson was in that show. Nikki Strayer, R.B. Embleton.
Oh my God.
Sean McKetty, Tony DeCordy. There were a bunch of great names. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Danelle Medeiros.
I mean, your memory is ultimately worlds beyond mine. I mean, that's remarkable. It was super fun and an incredibly talented cast.
Right, and we do still have a lot of opportunities for students to conduct. We've had student conductors almost every year, and I that you were kind of the pioneer in that way of being the first one to
I
get
did
that.
what I
So
could.
way to go.
I'm not, please. Yeah.
You're a trailblazer
Yeah,
for all the rest of these
I'm just
years.
a humble orchestra conductor.
After MIDI,
Mhm.
you end up in where's Joey's neck of the woods now, right?
You live in Washington Heights, don't you, Joey? I believe
Yeah, and I want to apologize for going on mute for a bit, but it was 7 o'clock, and to celebrate the healthcare workers, Harlem was blasting Titanium. So Titanium, if I can speak correctly. So
That's so cool. We have such a small version of that in my neighborhood, but around 8 p.m. people do show their support in various ways,
yeah,
But I did end up in New York after high school. And eventually, for the last few years that I was there, I lived up in Washington Heights, kind of in Joey's neck of the woods on 157th and Riverside. But I went to go to the Manhattan School of Music.
what do you like about going to a conservatory?
I liked just the focus of the school. I think that it enabled me to get everything that I wanted to get out of it, and then some, just being it was a bit of a one-track thing, but with a jazz piano degree, it's such a well-rounded institution in terms of teaching you how to be an improviser, be a writer, which was a huge focus at the school. But I think what I appreciated the most was that they put a heavy emphasis on individuality in ways that other programs probably do, but it's not such like a focus or like a cornerstone of the institution. Like, they really encouraged us to find our own voice.
Your path from New York to LA has a pit stop back in the Bay Area.
Yep, sure did.
But on your way back to Los Angeles, we talk a lot about with our current students how the MIDI connection runs strong once you leave campus. Your connection to LA involves another very central MIDI figure in the music program at MIDI, Mr. Brian Whelan. Is that right?
That is correct. I don't tell Brian this all that often, but he certainly knows how influential he's been in my career. Brian has hooked me up with gigs. We've recorded albums together. He's produced a lot of records that we've worked on together. And he was supposed to be getting married like tomorrow, but they had to postpone the wedding. But only to say that our relationship has remained super close, that I was going to be in his wedding, and we have all sorts of different projects still in the works. And so, the MIDI connection, especially with him, has remained super strong and ultimately very rewarding musically for me, just because I've learned so much from him over the years.
How do you get from LA, playing a bunch of gigs with a bunch of different people, to being in the band DAWES?
Well, good luck. Very, very good luck. And right time at the right place, right place at the right time, rather. But more technically speaking, I've told people it's the most classic network story, where I had an opportunity to sub for their keyboard player who had gotten appendicitis on a tour, and I really loved their music and still do. And so I really took the opportunity to heart to do the best job I possibly could. And it was an amazing show, one of the best rock and roll shows I think I had ever played up until that point.
Now, this wasn't just a quick, you go down the street and play, right? Like, you had to travel.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I was super stressed. I had 48 hours to learn a 2-hour set, which might not sound like much, but some of the songs are relatively involved. And if you're trying to really do your best, that means covering very specific parts in a very specific feel, but also I was concerned with covering background vocals. And so I had a very short window of time to really work up the material, some of which I already knew just being a fan. But I flew out to Boston to meet them. So I'm alone on this flight, flying out to Boston to meet guys that I maybe met once or twice, no rehearsal. And so we get together at sound check. I guess there is a funny story in that we spot check things. It wasn't even a full rehearsal. And we get to the show and it's sold out, and it's a dream come true for me. And there's a song of ours called Coming Back to a Man, which is an older song that I wasn't involved in the recording, but the original recording's in a certain key. And I learned that song in the original key. Unbeknownst to me, somewhere along the way, they had decided to drop the key that they played in by, whatever, a whole step or so. And so I just come in on the downbeat of the song about as wrong as you possibly could, and had to adjust instantaneously so as to, get back on track, not have anybody in the audience think that the sub keyboard player screwed up and all these things. And I think that was also one of the things that when the time came and they were looking for a change in keyboard players, they told me, that was something that stuck out to them in terms of being quick on the uptake and realizing that in one chord you're in the wrong key, and how do you adjust immediately to then play the song and have it not sound completely awful. You
had to transpose the song in your mind on the fly.
On the fly, yeah, with no warning and a certain generous amount of panic coursing through my veins, wondering what was going on at that point. So they definitely kept me on my toes, and
that sounds terrifying. But
the adrenaline rush was extreme. And after the show, it was a pretty amazing moment, and sort of with the cherry on top, this particular venue, when it's a sold out performance, they gift you a bottle of champagne, and I had never even experienced that really before. And so to celebrate the show that was kind of a dream show for me, pop open a bottle of champagne to celebrate, and then to have to go home thinking that was probably a one and done deal, and I was never going to play with that band again. Unbeknownst to me, they were looking for a change in their keyboard player, and luckily enough, they decided to kind of call me for that job. But there was a minute there where I was a bit sad that was the one and only show that I would play with the band. And since, there's probably been 1,000. So
since you've joined, you guys have 2 albums and an upcoming album.
Yes.
That you've been a part of. One of the albums is called All Gonna Die. And
very uplifting.
Yes, very uplifting. Yes, especially at this time.
Right. This was around 2016, so it was kind of a pre-pandemic sentiment.
There you go. Tell us a little bit about the song "Roll with the Punches."
Well, "Roll with the Punches" is definitely up there among my favorites in the entire catalog of the band. The recording of the song was especially fun for me. We did that record with a musician named Blake Mills, who has a long history with the band as a friend and former collaborator. But Blake is one of the leading young, bright producing minds in the world. He does unbelievable work and he's a genius, really. But we were working up that song, and we had practiced it a bunch, and we all had certain ideas of what we wanted to do. But when it came down to the keyboard part, just by default, because there's only 4 of us in the band, you can only do so much. But there was a kind of a lead guitar line or a kind of a lead melody that Taylor, the lead singer and guitar player, couldn't really play it all at the same time. So I kind of took it upon myself just to kind of commandeer it and take it over. And it kind of became a focal point of the recording of the song, which was kind of just came about out of necessity, but it became a big part of our live shows and kind of a focal point of the recording itself.
both retreated to their sides, drawing lists of demands and muddy lines in the sand, trying out their separate lives. Most of the damage was collateral, but still inspired some debate on all the principles of why all the people we love are the same ones we can also hate. You just roll with the punches until you can't feel a thing. You just roll with the punches. Oh yeah.
And your latest album, Password. So tell me about the song Feed the Fire from that album.
Feed the Fire, it's an interesting one because it's a bit different from a lot of the other stuff that we do. We are appropriately categorized as a rock and roll band, but in a lot of ways we are in a very classic and very folksy kind of wing of the rock and roll genre. And with We're All Gonna Die and Passwords, we took to experimenting a bit more. And with Feed the Fire, produced by Jonathan Wilson, kind of a bit of a like a reconnection or whatever. And we definitely kind of combined a lot of different influences on that track than we would have or did in other recordings. So there's drum loops. It's very upbeat. It's danceable. We don't have songs of that tempo or feel. So it was really fun for us to kind of delve into that world that is more electronic and more stagnant dynamically, to where we can kind of explore these more like electronic spaces as opposed to our rootsy Americana influence. And there was a great opportunity on the outro of the song for a piano solo. So it was a great recording experience.
Seize your moment, man. Seize the moment.
I think a great piece of advice to anybody watching this is if anybody asks you if you want to take a solo, if you can sing, if you can do this, if you can do that, the answer is just always yes.
There's someone in my reflection that's been haunting me my whole life. There's a world outside my window I can barely even hear. And I wonder to myself as I am straightening my bow tie, how could I look so perfect on the screen and so awful in the mirror? Trying to
great stuff that you're doing with DAWES, which, by the way, because I'm now a recent fan, is totally the type of music that they blast at Central Park in the summer. So I'm really excited.
Oh, well, I appreciate you becoming a new fan, for one. And, you know, the times we're in have been strange for the music industry, but I think we were supposed to be playing in Central Park this summer, and I believe that we'll be shooting for that next summer too. So it's not only the appropriate style of music already, but I think we will ideally be there.
I'm so there. But in addition to all the great stuff that you're doing with the band, you're also coming up with your own stuff as a songwriter, yeah?
Yes, that is correct. It's been something that I've been doing since MIDI, in terms of writing my own music. I've never been, although I have tried, and no one will ever know about the lyrics that I've written, and that's a secret that I will take to the grave. But I've been writing instrumental things that are jazzy or not. I mean, they're in a pretty wide umbrella. They're certainly instrumental, and it's been something that I've been interested in doing for a long time. Somewhere along the way, I got caught up with touring schedules and, you know, just paying the bills, doing other gigs, to where I didn't really have a lot of time to focus on my own music. And that was a priority last year for me. I think it was a New Year's resolution even, is that I wouldn't feel complete, or it wouldn't be a productive year if I didn't at least record my own music. And I found that, you know, in kind of taking stock of the relationships around me with other musicians, that I mean, fortunately had my close friends and other acquaintances that are just incredibly gifted, talented musicians, producers, and improvisers that were, luckily for me, willing to be a part of the project.
Let's listen to one of the tracks from Lee's upcoming solo album here. Lee Pardini, you are a trailblazer. If you survived conducting the first musical in the Kincaid Theater, then I think you can survive your upcoming solo album release. And we're very excited that you joined us here on TGIF. You know, one question before you go, as you've, you know, now toured around the United States, and I would imagine certain parts of the world, you know, playing music. Is there one venue that really stands out to you, or one person that you've met through your various travels and performances that is just a real standout moment?
I'll give you two. One is the Fillmore in San Francisco. I've had the opportunity to play a lot at this point. And because it's in the Bay Area, it's close to home. It's always a bit of a family affair for me. And so I have really positive, really great associations with that venue, and all of that venue's history you can feel in the walls there. So it's a really special room. Of a specific size, I think Madison Square Garden is also one that I had the opportunity of playing, that is like, I think it even touts itself as like the world's greatest arena or whatever.
Yeah, that small venue.
Yeah. And that, you know, and that being in New York City was also a bit of a family affair, but it's the Garden. So, you know, I kind of have to include it because it's kind of a bucket list venue. In terms of people, I recently have had the privilege of playing with and interacting with Phil Lesh, who was the bass player of the Grateful Dead. And, you know, people are like, what's the word? I think the Grateful Dead can be relatively divisive as a band. Not everybody's into the scene, not everybody's into the music, but they're one of the rare bands whose cultural impact was just as big, if not bigger, than their musical
No
impact.
question. No
So
question.
they're like the Beatles in a lot of ways in terms of they were game changers socially and culturally, as well as musically. And so, you know, I mean, they were, I mean, they're still playing in a different formation now, but just the stories and like the wisdom, and it's just, it's crazy being around him, because he has stories about playing the Egyptian pyramids and hanging out with Miles Davis. And then you read things like, you know, Thomas Pynchon, one of the greatest authors, is seemingly like a Grateful Dead fan. I mean, they had garnered like adoration from like people who I wouldn't even consider peers, like great novelists and filmmakers and all sorts of like cultural icons were fans of the Grateful Dead. So being around him is kind of like, you know, he's a very like open book. So the stories that he tells, I have a lot to learn, and just how he thinks about music. So that's been fun, to say the least.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lee, thanks so much for taking some time out of your quarantine and spending a few moments with Joey and I. And we look forward to seeing what's next. We look forward to your album release. We look forward to what's next from DAWES. And, you know, next time you're at the Fillmore, count me in.
I will. And thanks for having me, you guys. It was super fun. I was really, really looking forward to it when you reached out to do this. So it was a pleasure, really.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week. Same time.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye.
Thank God it's Friday.